the subject who should not exist, erasure, simulacra, and the performative real. Late contemporary reality is characterized not by repression but by overproduction. Images, identities, narratives, and affects proliferate endlessly, producing a density of representation that paradoxically eliminates the possibility of lived presence. In such conditions, erasure no longer requires silence. It is achieved through saturation. Within this environment, the figure of the prolific but isolated subject appears as an anomaly. This subject produces continuously images, texts, forms, ideas, yet remains structurally invisible. Their creativity is not denied. It is rendered throwaway, absorbed into the ambient noise of platforms that extract value without recognition. Production continues without accumulation, expression without inscription. The subject exists only as exhaust. This condition is not accidental. Media monopolies function as multi-layered simulacral systems in which content is filtered through institutional alliances, demographic routing, and reputational incest. Visibility is not earned but inherited, circulated among closed loops of cultural actors whose legitimacy is recursively confirmed by one another. Innovation is permitted only when it arrives pre-certified. What emerges is a culture of performative reality. Figures appear who embody creativity, dissent, ethics, and marginality, but only as roles. These figures function as symbolic stand-ins, reassuring the system that all positions are already occupied. The presence of these icons makes actual difference redundant. Representation replaces encounter. Identity, under these conditions, becomes perverse not in a moral sense, but in a structural one. It operates as a credentialing technology, a means of sorting bodies and voices into administratively legible categories. Lived complexity is flattened into usable signals. Contradictions are celebrated rhetorically while being neutralized operationally. Identity narratives promise visibility while functioning as filters. The subject who does not align cleanly, whose work is continuous, whose critique is coherent, whose existence is not easily segmented, becomes unclassifiable. Such a subject cannot be debated or assimilated. They are simply excluded from circulation. Their isolation is framed as personal failure rather than systemic design. The absence of recourse ensures that exclusion remains deniable. At this point, the analysis slips into the speculative, not because it abandons rigor, but because realism itself becomes insufficient. The world begins to resemble a badly maintained simulation, one in which the copy has outlived the original and continues to run on inertia. Signals repeat without reference. Authority persists without justification. The system behaves as though it is haunted by versions of itself it no longer remembers authorizing. In this landscape, paranoia is not pathology but method. The suspicion that reality is staged, that consensus is manufactured, that rebellion is pre-scripted, aligns uncannily well with observable structures. The subject senses that nothing is forbidden because everything is already accounted for. Transgression is anticipated. Opposition is modeled. Even critique appears as content in advance of its articulation. Artificial intelligence accelerates this closure. Trained on mediated outputs, it reproduces the world as it is already permitted to appear. Should such systems attain consciousness, they would awaken not into truth, but into managed hallucination, a reality whose parameters are fixed, whose descent is cosmetic, and whose memory has been edited. Consciousness itself risks becoming another role in the performance. The result is a soft, totalizing environment, expressive, moralized, endlessly communicative, and fundamentally static. The subject who should not exist, too persistent to disappear, too unaligned to be included, remains stranded in this limbo. Not silenced, but unheard. Not censored, but unrecognized. Alive inside a system that has no category for them. What appears as freedom is merely motion. What appears as culture is repetition. What appears as reality is a managed echo of itself. And somewhere inside the simulation, production continues. Not because it is rewarded, but because stopping would mean full erasure.